When a janitor stepped out into a cold, rainy night in New York City, he had no idea his life was about to change forever. It was March 15th, 2010. Midtown Manhattan. The rain was coming down so hard, it looked like the sky was trying to wash the whole city clean. Desmond Okafor had just finished a long shift mopping floors and emptying trash cans at one of the most famous buildings in the world, Rockefeller Center. Nobody knew his name. Nobody said thank you. And he was invisible in the way that hard-working people sometimes are. Always there, always seen, never really noticed. He pulled on his old gray raincoat, opened his beat-up yellow umbrella, the one he had fixed 3 times with black electrical tape because he could not afford a new one, and started walking toward the subway. He made it half a block before he stopped. Standing outside a small deli on 6th Avenue was a tall man in a black jacket. No umbrella, no hood. Just standing there, completely soaked, staring at his phone like his night had already gone wrong in every possible way. Desmond looked at the man. Then he looked at his umbrella. The one he needed. The one he had fixed with his own hands. The only one he had. And without saying a single extra word, he held it out and gave it away. He walked home in the pouring rain for 45 minutes that night. Soaking wet. No regrets. The man he gave that umbrella to was Keanu Reeves. And that one small moment, a broken umbrella passed between 2 strangers on a wet New York sidewalk, was quietly setting off a chain of events that nobody could have ever predicted. A chain that would take 14 years to complete. A chain that would connect a struggling janitor, a famous movie star, and a young woman building something extraordinary in Atlanta, Georgia. What happened next is one of the most unbelievable true stories you will ever hear. And because 24 years after Desmond arrived in America with $200 and the address of a church written on his palm, he walked into a room in Atlanta in a brand new suit and stood at a podium in front of 200 people. And on a giant screen behind him, a face appeared. A face he recognized immediately. And what that face said next, in front of everyone, made Desmond grip that podium with both hands to keep himself from falling apart completely. Stay with us through this entire video, because the moment that screen lit up in that Atlanta room is something you will not see coming. And when it hits, it is going to hit you somewhere deep. This is the full story of Desmond Okafor, and it starts with one umbrella, one stranger, and one rainy night that nobody was supposed to remember. It was raining so hard that Tuesday evening that the gutters on 49th Street looked like rivers. March 15th, 2010. Midtown Manhattan. But the kind of cold that does not ask permission before it gets into your bones. The kind of night that makes you wonder why you ever left somewhere warm. Desmond Okafor had just finished his 6-hour evening shift at Rockefeller Center. He had mopped the marble floors that tourists photographed. He had cleaned the glass doors that famous people walked through without looking up. He had emptied the trash cans of people who would never once wonder who emptied their trash cans. And tonight, like every night for the last 9 years, he had done all of it without a single person learning his name. He pulled on his old gray raincoat, tucked his bag under his arm, and opened his yellow umbrella, the one with the broken spoke he had fixed 3 times with black electrical tape, and he stepped out into the rain. He made it exactly half a block. Standing outside a small deli on 6th Avenue was a tall man in a black jacket. No umbrella. No hood, no plan, just standing there, completely soaking, staring down at his phone with the particular look of someone whose night had already gone wrong in several different ways. Desmond slowed down. He knew that look. He had worn that look. Not because of a ruined phone or a missed cab, but because of letters from Ghana that said his daughter had a fever and there was no money for the clinic, because of rent checks that came back, stamped with the wrong kind of red, and because of nights when the distance between where he was standing and where he was trying to go felt like the entire Atlantic Ocean, which, for Desmond Okafor, it literally was. He stopped walking. The tall man looked up, dark eyes, tired face. He said quietly, "Sorry, man. You need to get past?" "No," Desmond said. He looked at his umbrella. He looked at the man. He held it out. "Take it." The man blinked. "I can't take your umbrella." "You can," Desmond said. "So I know where another one is." That was not entirely true. The man stared at him for one long moment. Then he slowly reached out and took it. He opened his mouth to say something more, something that might have been important. But Desmond was already walking, shoulders forward, into the rain. The tall man stood on 6th Avenue, holding a yellow umbrella with a taped spoke, watching a janitor disappear into the dark. His name was Keanu Reeves, and he would not forget this night for the rest of his life. But Desmond did not know that yet. Desmond was already 3 blocks away, walking fast, collar up, rain hitting the back of his neck like small, cold fingers. He was thinking about the subway. He was thinking about whether there was rice left in the pot at home. He was thinking, in the distant, low-level way he always thought about Ghana. And to understand what that umbrella cost him, what it truly cost him, you have to understand where Desmond Okafor came from. He was born in 1966 in Kumasi, Ghana, the second largest city in the country, a place of red dust roads and the sweet smoke of suya grills and church bells on Sunday mornings that rolled across the rooftops like something alive. His father, Emmanuel Okafor, where he was a schoolteacher who wore the same brown shoes every day and believed with his whole heart that education was the one thing the world could not take back once you had it. His mother, Grace, sold printed cloth at the Kejatia market, the largest open-air market in West Africa, and she could do arithmetic in her head faster than anyone Desmond ever met in any country, in any building, for the rest of his life. They were not rich. But the house had a mango tree in the yard, and laughter at the dinner table, and that, Emmanuel always said, was the math that mattered. There was, however, no money for university. And Desmond was the kind of smart that made that fact hurt in a specific way. A sharp, quiet ache, like a door closing in a room you were never quite allowed to enter. So he taught himself things instead. He learned to fix radios, then televisions. Then, in the late 1990s, when the first computers began appearing in Kumasi in small, buzzing cybercafes with plastic chairs and flickering screens, Desmond walked 12 kilometers to sit in front of one for 2 hours. He did not fully understand what he was looking at, but something happened inside him when he did. The way a key feels when it finds the right lock. A small, solid click. He knew, sitting in that plastic chair in Kumasi, that this was the future. He also knew, with the same certainty, that the future was not coming to find him here. In 2001, at age 35, he left. He left behind his wife, Abena, a small, sturdy woman who laughed easily, cried quietly, and squeezed both his hands at the airport with a grip that said everything her voice could not. He left behind his daughter, Nana, who was 7 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, and did not fully understand why Daddy was not coming back on Sunday like he usually did. He arrived in New York City on a work visa. See, he had $200 in his pocket and the address of a Ghanaian church in the Bronx written carefully on the inside of his left palm. He looked out the window as the plane descended over the city. All those lights, all those people, all those floors that needed mopping. He was ready. But New York City does not care whether you are ready or not. New York City is not waiting for you. It does not pause, look up, and make room. Oh, it just keeps moving, loud and fast and enormous. And you either find a way to move with it, or you get swallowed whole. Desmond found a way. For 9 years he cleaned buildings. He shared a room in a Bronx apartment with 4 other men. 2 from Nigeria, 1 from Senegal, 1 from Jamaica. And they took turns sleeping on the good mattress, and never once complained about it, because complaining cost energy they could not afford to spend. He sent money home every single month, and sometimes $400, sometimes $200. Once, during a February that he did not like to remember, only $80. He did not feel sorry for himself. That was the thing about Desmond that people who met him always noticed, even if they could not quite name what they were noticing. He had a stillness, not sadness, not defeat. Just a man who had decided, at some point so early it had become invisible, that forward was the only direction worth walking in. See, which is what makes what happened on 6th Avenue that night so important to understand. Keanu Reeves was not a careless man. People who did not know him assumed things. That fame made you numb, that money made you comfortable, that success put a kind of glass between you and the world. But Keanu had spent his whole adult life watching that glass carefully. He did not want it. He had lost too many people to feel comfortable behind anything transparent. He stood on 6th Avenue holding the yellow umbrella, and he watched Desmond walk away, and he felt something land in his chest. Not pity, not admiration exactly. Something older and quieter than either of those things. He thought about the electrical tape on the broken spoke. The care of it. The fact that someone had fixed a cheap umbrella not once, but multiple times, had looked at something broken and decided it was still worth keeping, still worth repairing, and had then, not without a breath of hesitation, given it to a stranger. He thought about what that means. What kind of person does that? What kind of life builds that kind of reflex in a person? He stood in the rain for a long time after Desmond disappeared. Then he stepped inside the deli, ordered a coffee he did not need, and asked the man behind the counter a question that would quietly echo forward 14 years. The man with the umbrella. Do you know him? The owner nodded. That's Desmond. He cleans the building across the street. Every Tuesday. Good man. Keanu looked out the window at the dark, wet street. Yeah, he said softly. I could see that. He took out a napkin. He wrote 1 word and 1 address. He put it in his jacket pocket and walked out into the rain. And then life did what life always does. It moved on. Fast and full and completely indifferent to small moments on wet sidewalks. Keanu flew back to Los Angeles. The napkin went into a box on his desk beneath other papers, other days, other things that needed attention. The yellow umbrella leaned against the wall in his hallway for months before someone on his house staff quietly moved it somewhere sensible. The world kept turning. And in the Bronx, Desmond Okafor kept going. He kept cleaning buildings. He kept sharing the apartment. He kept sending money home every month without missing a single one. Not in 9 years, not in 10, not in 11. He tracked every dollar in a small green notebook with a pen that he kept clipped to the cover. Every transfer, every receipt, every month accounted for in careful handwriting that looked exactly like his father's. But something shifted in 2013. Something small that turned out to be enormous. It was a Wednesday afternoon in October. The building manager at Rockefeller Center, a woman named Gloria Fontaine, permanently stressed, permanently moving, always holding 3 phones and a coffee, came around the corner of the maintenance corridor looking like a person whose day had caught fire. The building's entire Wi-Fi network had gone down. The IT company was not answering. She had 40 people on the upper floors who could not work, 2 important meetings in an hour, and absolutely no solution in sight. She found Desmond mopping the corridor floor. She stared at him for a moment, the way people stare when they have run out of every other option and have arrived, almost accidentally, at the last door in the hallway. "Desmond," she said, "is there anything you know about internet routers?" He set the mop against the wall. "Let me look at it," he said. He looked at it. He fixed it in 40 minutes. Gloria Fontaine stood in the server room doorway, staring at him the way people stare at something they cannot immediately file into a category they already have. "How do you know how to do that?" she said. "Library," he said simply, and picked up his mop. But Gloria was not the kind of woman who filed things away and forgot them. She started calling Desmond first, whenever something in the building broke. Then she started paying him extra for it, off the books at first, then properly. Then she mentioned him to a colleague who managed office space for a tech startup in Chelsea, who brought Desmond in part-time to handle their internal systems. By 2016, Desmond was working 2 jobs, janitor by title in the evenings, IT support by day. He was 50 years old. He had never taken a single computer science class in his life. He did not have a certificate or a LinkedIn profile or a business card. He had a library card, a green notebook. See, in 30 years of deciding that tomorrow he would know more than he knew today. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, in Accra, his daughter Nana had been growing up on the money he sent every month. She had grown up quietly fierce, sharp in the way her father was sharp. Not loud about it, not showy, just consistent and deep, and always, always paying attention. In 2015, she won a scholarship to study computer science at Georgia Tech, in Atlanta, Georgia. When the phone call came, Desmond sat down slowly on the floor of his room. He pressed his back against the bed. He looked at the ceiling, and he cried. Not the sad kind, not the tired kind. The kind that only comes when something you were too afraid to fully hope for walks through the door and sits down beside you like it was always planning to arrive. His daughter was going to university. Emmanuel Okafor's granddaughter was going to university. The seed was growing. But seeds do not grow in straight lines. And they push through dirt. They crack pavement. They find water in places that seem to have none. And the years between 2015 and 2020 were exactly that kind of growing. Slow, underground, invisible to anyone who was not paying very close attention. Nana Okafor arrived in Atlanta in August 2015 with 1 suitcase, a second-hand laptop, and her father's particular quality of stillness. She called Desmond every Sunday from her dormitory room at Georgia Tech. Sometimes the calls were 20 minutes. Sometimes they were 2 hours. He asked about her classes. She asked about his knees. The subway stairs were getting harder. They talked about Abina back in Accra, who was waiting patiently for her own visa, with the focused calm of a woman who had already done the hardest waiting of her life and knew exactly how it was done. Nana graduated in 2019. She was 25 years old, and she had an idea that she could not stop thinking about. The idea was this. There were millions of African professionals scattered across the world, in New York and London and Toronto and Dubai and Nairobi and Houston, people with real degrees, real skills, real experience. But they were largely invisible to each other. There was no professional network that truly understood their specific reality. The immigration paperwork that swallowed years whole, the credential recognition problems that made qualified people feel unqualified, the particular exhaustion of building a career in a country that did not know your name before you arrived and was not entirely sure what to do with you now that you had. Nana had lived that reality. Her father had lived it for 30 years. She wanted to build the thing that should have existed already. She called it Kwame Connect, named for Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, and the man who believed, above everything else, that African people deserved to stand connected and sovereign in the world. Nana believed that too. She believed it the way her grandfather Emmanuel had believed in education, quietly, completely, without needing anyone else to agree. She started building in January 2020 from a small apartment in Atlanta's old Fourth Ward neighborhood, at a desk pushed against the window, with 2 monitors and a half-finished cup of tea that was always going cold. 2 weeks later, the world locked down. What seemed like the worst possible timing turned out to be something else entirely. The entire planet was suddenly at home, isolated, staring at screens, desperate for exactly the kind of human connection that Kwame Connect was being built to provide. The platform grew the way a fire grows when someone opens a window. Fast, hungry, and suddenly very difficult to contain. By December 2020, Kwame Connect had 200,000 users across 34 countries. By mid-2021, 3 Fortune 500 companies had signed partnership agreements to use it for global talent recruitment. By 2022, Nana had an office in Atlanta's Tech Square, a team of 40 people, and her face in Forbes magazine on a Tuesday morning that she celebrated by calling her father and then immediately going back to work. She was 28 years old, and in early 2022, she raised her first serious round of funding, $18 million from a group of investors that included several well-known venture capital firms, and, quietly, tucked at the back of the term sheet, a small private investment entity registered in Los Angeles, whose name meant nothing to her at the time. She did not look into it closely. She was too busy building. She had no way of knowing that the person behind that quiet investment had a napkin in a box somewhere. A napkin with one word and one address written on it. A napkin that was 14 years old. She had no way of knowing that the most important phone call of her life was not the one from the investors. It was the one she was about to make to her father on a Sunday evening, standing in her Atlanta kitchen, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She had rehearsed what she was going to say. She had written notes. She had crossed them out and rewritten them twice. Then she had called her best friend in London, talked it through, hung up, paced her kitchen for 20 minutes, and then stood at the window watching the Atlanta streetlights come on one by one in the early dark. Then she dialed. Desmond picked up on the second ring the way he always did. She could hear Abina's cooking in the background, the hiss of oil, the low knock of a wooden spoon against a pot. She could hear the Bronx apartment in all its small familiar sounds, and for just a moment she was 7 years old again, and her father was not yet gone, and everything was still the size of a mango tree yard in Kumasi. She swallowed. "Dad," she said, "I need to talk to you about something big." She told him everything. She explained the company, the growth, the 34 countries, the 2 million users. Here she explained what a vice president of global operations actually did. The 3 continental teams, the day-to-day infrastructure, the bridge between her vision and the complicated human machinery of a fast-moving global company. She explained the salary slowly and carefully. The way you explain something to someone when you know the number is going to feel unreal to them. because it was more money than Desmond Okafor had earned in the entirety of his working life combined. And when she finished, there was a long silence, the kind of silence that has weight. "Nana," Desmond said finally, in a voice that was very careful and very steady. "I am a janitor." "No," she said, and her voice did not waver even slightly. "You are a man who taught himself an entirely new field of knowledge from scratch while working night shifts. You managed the IT infrastructure for a major commercial real estate operation for 6 years without a single qualification on paper. You make every person who talks to you feel like the most important person in the room. I have met hundreds of executives now, Dad. I know exactly what I am looking at." Another silence, longer this time. "Your board will not accept this," he said quietly. "I am the CEO," she said. "2 board members have already approved the appointment." "Which ones?" She paused. Just half a second. "On just the briefest hesitation. The kind that only a father who has known you since before you had all your teeth would ever catch." "You'll meet them," she said softly. "At the announcement. In Atlanta. Will you come?" Desmond looked across the kitchen at Abina. She was stirring the pot with her back to him, pretending with extraordinary commitment that she was not listening to every single word. He watched her shoulders. He watched the careful stillness of a woman holding herself very still so she would not cry before it was time to cry. He put the phone against his chest for a moment. He closed his eyes. 58 years old. Gray in his hair. Aching knees. A green notebook full of wire transfer receipts. A library card that had been renewed so many times the laminate was peeling at the corners. He put the phone back to his ear. "Let me talk to your mother," he said. He lowered the phone and looked at Abina. She turned around slowly, wooden spoon in hand, eyes already shining. She pointed the spoon directly at him and said, in Twi, with the full authority of a woman who had waited 23 years in 2 different countries for this moment, "If you say no to that child after everything, Desmond Okafor, I will never make you jollof rice again as long as I live." He laughed. The real laugh. Since the deep one that started somewhere below his ribs and came out slow and warm and completely helpless. He picked up the phone. "Nana," he said, "I will come to Atlanta." He had no idea, not the smallest idea, what was waiting for him there. Something was coming that would break him open in the best and most unexpected way of his entire life. And it had been coming, quietly, for 14 years. But Desmond did not know that yet. He only knew that on the morning of September 12, 2024, he was standing in the bathroom of a hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia, in a new gray suit that his daughter had picked out, staring at himself in the mirror with the particular expression of a man who is trying to recognize his own reflection. He was 58 years old. The suit fit well. He did not feel like himself in it. He called Abina from the bathroom. She answered immediately. "How do I look?" he said. "I am in the next room, Desmond," she said. "Open the door." He opened the door. Oh, she was already dressed. A yellow dress, floor length, the color of something warm and certain. Nana had called 2 weeks ago and asked her specifically to wear yellow. Abina had not thought to ask why. She thought it was simply her daughter's taste, her daughter's eye for ceremony and color, and the way things should look when they mattered. She straightened Desmond's collar with both hands. She looked at him the way she had looked at him at the airport in Accra in 2001. The same eyes, 23 years deeper. "You look like your father," she said quietly. He could not speak for a moment. They took the elevator down together. The Kwame Connect headquarters in Tech Square was unrecognizable from its usual working self. The open-plan floors had been cleared and arranged with chairs. Kente cloth patterns in gold and green ran along the walls. The flags of 34 countries hung from the ceiling in long, straight lines. And somewhere near the back, Desmond could see the Ghanaian flag. Red, gold, green, the black star at its center, and he had to look away from it quickly. 200 employees filled the room. Investors joined by screen from London and Nairobi. Journalists from Forbes and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution stood near the back with notebooks open and pens ready. Nana stood at the front in a white blazer, calm and composed, and completely in command of the room the way she always was. She caught her father's eye when he walked in and smiled. Not the public smile she used for stages and cameras, but the other one, the small one, the one that belonged only to Sunday phone calls and kitchen tables, and the two of them. The speeches were given. The title was announced. The room applauded. Desmond walked to the podium and gripped it with both hands and spoke for 5 minutes. Quiet, so honest words about Kumasi and the mango tree and the library on 42nd Street and the woman in the yellow dress in the third row who had held everything together for 23 years while he was far away, learning how to be worthy of this moment. He was stepping back from the microphone when Nana's voice stopped him. "Dad," she said, "there is one more thing." She nodded to someone at the back of the room. The lights dimmed. A screen behind the stage came to life, and the room went completely silent. The specific silence of 200 people understanding simultaneously that something real and unrepeatable is happening in front of them. The man on the screen was sitting in a simple chair against a plain white wall. No backdrop, no staging, no performance. He looked exactly like a person who had asked for all of that to be removed. He was 59 years old. Dark eyes. A calm, unhurried way of sitting that took up no more space than it needed. Keanu Reeves looked directly into the camera. And he said, "Hi, Desmond. I have been waiting a long time to say that." Desmond's hands tightened on the podium. In the third row, Abina made a sound so small that only the women sitting directly beside her heard it. She pressed both hands over her mouth and held them there. Nana stood perfectly still at the edge of the stage, watching her father's face. Keanu continued, "On March 15th, 2010, and I was standing outside a deli on 6th Avenue in Manhattan, soaking wet, feeling sorry for myself in the way that people who have no real reason to feel sorry for themselves sometimes do. A man in a gray raincoat stopped walking, looked at me, and handed me his umbrella. He did not wait to be thanked. He did not ask for anything. He just put it in my hand and walked into the rain. I never forgot that. I asked the deli owner who he was. He told me his name was Desmond, and that he cleaned the building across the street. I wrote it down on a napkin and I put it in my pocket, and I kept it." A pause. The room did not breathe. "In 2021, my financial advisor brought me an investment opportunity. A young founder in Atlanta building a professional network for the African diaspora. Smart, scalable, exactly the kind of company I believe in. I said yes. I did not investigate every detail, and I trusted the work. Then in 2023, I was reading a profile in Forbes about the founder. There was one line, one single line, about how she had been raised by a Ghanaian immigrant father who worked nights as a janitor at Rockefeller Center and taught himself computers at the New York Public Library on 42nd Street. I stopped reading. I got up from my desk. I went and found the box. I found the napkin. Her father was Desmond. The man who gave me his umbrella in the rain on 6th Avenue in 2010, the man whose name I had written on a napkin and kept for 13 years without fully understanding why, was the father of the woman I had invested in without either of us knowing the other existed. The screen was absolutely silent for 3 full seconds. I called Nana. I told her the whole story, and I made one request. One single request as a board member. Not because he was her father, but because any man who gives away his only umbrella to a stranger and then walks home alone in the rain for 45 minutes without a second thought, that man already has the most important qualification there is. You want that person at the center of something you are building. Congratulations, Desmond. A breath, quiet and genuine. You earned this long before today. And thank you for the umbrella. The screen went dark, so for 1 full second, the room held the silence like something precious. And then it broke, not into polite applause, but into the other kind entirely. The standing kind. The chest kind. The kind that erupts from people when they witness something true. Abena was no longer trying to hold herself still. She was sobbing openly, her yellow dress shaking, both hands pressed hard against her face. Desmond Okafor stood at the podium and did not move for a long moment. His jaw worked slowly. On he looked up at the ceiling, found the Ghanaian flag among the 34, the black star, the gold, and he pressed his lips together tight against everything that was trying to come through them. Then he leaned into the microphone one final time. His voice cracked once, softly, right in the middle, like a branch that bends before it holds. My father used to say, "Give without expecting to receive." But God keeps the ledger. He stepped back. He walked down from the stage. How he went directly to Abena and took both her hands in his, and they stood together in the center of that roaring room. A janitor and his wife, a man in a borrowed-feeling suit, and a woman in a yellow dress, while 200 people held them in the only way 200 people can. With noise, with witness, with the particular warmth of a room full of people who understand that they have just watched 30 years of quiet heroism finally arrive at its door. Nana found them in the middle of it all. She put her hand on her father's back and her head against her mother's shoulder, and the 3 of them stood like that, the Okafor family, together, in Atlanta, Georgia, while the room gradually, gently, came back down to earth around them. Nobody rushed them. Nobody needed to be anywhere else. Some moments are big enough that even busy people stop. There is a photograph from that afternoon that spread quietly across social media in the weeks that followed. It was not taken by a professional. The lighting was imperfect. The frame was slightly tilted. A Kwame Connect employee had taken it on her phone without thinking too much about it. Just a person pointing a camera at something that felt important. It shows Desmond and Abena Okafor standing in the center of the room, hands locked together, surrounded by 200 people on their feet. Nana is just visible at the left edge of the frame, her hand flat against her father's back. Desmond is looking up. Abena is looking at Desmond. The Ghanaian flag hangs in the background slightly out of focus, like something in a dream. Someone shared it with the caption, "This is what a long game looks like." It was shared 400,000 times in 2 weeks. Desmond never saw most of them. He was already at work. He started as Vice President of Global Operations at Kwame Connect on October 1st, 2024. His first act, before the strategy meetings, before the Continental team calls, before any of the things the role officially required, was to walk to the office kitchen, make himself a cup of tea, and sit quietly for 10 minutes. His second act was to design a mentorship program for employees who came from non-traditional backgrounds. No degree required. No formal qualifications necessary. Just hunger, as consistency, and the willingness to show up and keep learning long after anyone stopped watching. He named it the Library Program. Within 6 months, 11 employees had been promoted through it. He still calls Nana every Sunday. The calls are shorter now. They see each other in the office most days, pass in the corridor, argue warmly about operational decisions over lunch. But Sunday belongs to Sunday. It always will. Yeah, some things you protect not because they are fragile, but because they are foundational. Abina has completely stopped pretending not to listen. As for Keanu Reeves, he never made a public statement. No interview, no post, no announcement. The video in Atlanta was for Desmond, not for the internet, not for the story. Just for the man who deserved to hear it directly, in a room full of people who loved him. On a Thursday afternoon in September, when the Atlanta sky outside the Tech Square windows was completely, perfectly clear, he did send one thing. A package arrived at the Kwame Connect offices 2 weeks after the ceremony, addressed by hand to Desmond Okafor. Inside was a yellow umbrella, an exceptional one, the kind that costs real money, and with a solid aluminum frame and a smooth wooden handle that fit the hand like it had been made for it, and a small note written in careful handwriting on a plain white card. It said, "For the next rainy day. K." The umbrella sits on the shelf behind Desmond's desk. He has never opened it. He does not intend to. It is not for rain, and they both know it. It is for something that does not have a clean single word in English. Though in Twi, well, the language his mother spoke and his father taught and his daughter still uses on Sunday phone calls, there is a word for the feeling of a circle closing with grace. Here is the truest thing this story has to tell. Nothing Desmond Okafor did was extraordinary in the way that movies usually mean extraordinary. There was no single electric moment, no lottery ticket, no room that suddenly filled with light. He did not get discovered. He did not get lucky. He did not catch one perfect break that lifted him clear of everything difficult. He woke up every morning for 30 years and did the next right thing. He cleaned the floors. He went to the library. He sent the money home. He fixed the umbrella. He gave the umbrella away. He kept the green notebook. He answered the phone on the second ring. He got on the plane to Atlanta in a suit that felt like someone else's life. And he stood at a podium and told the truth simply. He just kept going. And the world did not make it easy. The world rarely does. The world is mostly wet sidewalks and broken spokes and distances that feel like oceans and doors that close before you get close enough to knock. But Desmond kept going anyway, quietly, consistently, without looking around to see if anyone was watching or counting or keeping score. Someone was. His father had told him, under a mango tree in Kumasi, in a yard full of afternoon light. The seed does not see the fruit, but it grows anyway. And before you go, drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from right now. We have people tuning in from all over the world, and we love seeing every single location. Whether you are in New York or Nairobi, London or Lagos, Atlanta or Accra, let us know you are here. And if this story moved you even a little, if Desmond's journey made you feel something real, please take just 1 second and hit that like button. It is a small thing, the way giving an umbrella is a small thing. But just like Desmond showed us, small things have a way of traveling much further than you expect. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story like this one. We find the real people, the quiet heroes, the ones the world almost missed. And we make sure their stories get heard. That is why we are here. That is what this channel is built on. And one last thing. Somewhere out there tonight, it is probably raining. And somewhere in that rain, there is a person who could use a small and simple act of kindness from a stranger. Be the person with the umbrella. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because the next story is already waiting for you.